Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum class. I'm your English teacher Zia. I welcome you to English grade 8 video lessons. So my dear learners, you know that now after finishing unit 4, we are on unit 5 and the title is Cell Phone Addiction. This is our lecture number 1 of unit 5, and in this lesson our topic will be extracted from the students' learning outcome, which is about the types of verbs. Now let's see what we are supposed to do. Now we are addressing the competency of grammar and our SLO is also resonating that. So let's read our students' learning outcome. It says use helping verbs, transitive and intransitive verbs in speech and writing. So you are already familiar with verbs. Now there are different types of verbs. In this lesson, we will be looking at the helping verbs, which you also call auxiliary verbs, transitive and intransitive verbs, and we will be looking at them in both our speech and in our writing. It is as simple as it looks. Now we will be focusing on this one throughout the lesson. Here is a vertical linkage of our SLO with the previous grade. The SLO is linked. I hope that you have gone through it and you can retain information as much as you can. Now after this, I would like to introduce you to today's brainstorming session where we'll be discussing a question, a very quick prompt for you. Now you have to storm your brains a little bit. Think about this, that thinking of a sentence where someone gives something to someone else. Can you identify the direct object, the thing that is given, and the indirect object, which is the person who is receiving it? So, as you know, our topic is about transitive and intransitive verbs. So, we learn about direct and indirect object. So, can you create a sentence? Can you make a sentence where you portray this in your own word? Like we say that if somebody is giving something to someone, so how does this work? Come up with your answers so we can move forward. Yes, I hope that you have made a very good sentence where all the conditions are met that we discussed in our brainstorming session. Now let's move on to our main topic, which is about types of verbs, and they are helping verbs, transitive verbs, and intransitive verbs. Now let's look at helping verbs first. What do they do? We know that verb is a word that describes an action. It tells it what the action is or just the state of being or existence. So let's read the helping verb. Helping verbs, they are also called auxiliary verbs. Now what do? They help the main verb, which is the main verb showing the action, to show tense or possibility. Helping verbs added with the main verb will become a verb phrase. And remember that the main verb is always the last in the phrase. As you can see over here, your helping verb comes first plus your main verb, which creates a verb phrase. So if you want to make a verb phrase, the main verb is always at the end. Now, we know that this is what a main verb is. It's also called an auxiliary verb, and this is the way of making it. It is actually helping the main verb, which you can say it could be thinking, running, or to say teach, learn. All these are then could be our main verbs. Now our helping verbs are helping these verbs in order to make the sentence clear to the listener or the reader. Now let's look at the most common helping verbs that we need to memorize, and they are the verbs of to be. Am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been, has, have, had, will, shall, do, did, and does, etc. All these are our helping verbs, and they are helping our main verb as we discussed over here. Let's look at them in different examples. Everyone is using phones frequently for various purposes. Now, can you spot the helping verb over here? Yes, it is is. Now, is helping our main verb, which is using something. Teenagers are using cell phones to an extreme level. Now, we have our helping verb are. Why? Because we are addressing a plural noun. Next one is intense playing of video games has caused the loss of many lives. Now, again, our helping verb, which is helping our main verb over here, is has. Not have, because we are dealing with a single activity, which is about playing games. So you can clearly see that all these helping verbs, all of them that are mentioned over here, they are very important. You need to learn how you can use them accordingly without any error or mistake. Now, next one is our transitive verbs. Now, let's see what they are. Why do we need to learn them? Now, a transitive verb is a verb that requires an object to receive the action. It means there is a word that requires an object, the action, to be received, and this is what we call our object. And our object is receiving the action. When we have this kind of verb, we call it a transitive verb. For example, frequent checking of cell phones also causes insomnia. Now, can you identify the verb in the sentence? Yes. We have a verb cause which requires an object, because if you do not include this object over here, you can see that the sentence is not complete and the verb is also incomplete. So the verb causes over here, it requires an object. It is necessary to state what the cell phone causes, and we know it causes insomnia, which means the inability to sleep or having a disturbed sleeping routine. A transitive verb can take more than one object. Now, there can be more than one object that the transitive verb is addressing. Let's look at this example. I also request parents to monitor their children's usage of technology. Here you can see that this word over here is our main verb, and this verb is a verb which requires an object. Let's look at that right over here. So our word parents is what is being requested, and the indirect object in this one is children, to whom the request is directed. So parents is the direct object and the indirect object is our children. Let's move on to intransitive verb now. An intransitive verb does not take a direct object. Unlike our transitive verb, which requires a direct object, intransitive, which is the opposite of transitive, does not take any direct object. Let's look at an example. We hear. Now, do you see any kind of object? No, there is not any object mentioned in the sentence. So here is an intransitive verb. It has no direct object. Here is your verb, but it is a sentence that is complete in its own and it does not require any kind of direct object. So here the word here is an intransitive verb because it does not require a direct object and it is complete in its own sense. So this is the difference between a transitive verb and an intransitive verb. The former requires a direct object and the latter does not require any kind of direct object. Now, let's look at some verbs that are transitive and intransitive both, which means that there are some words that are verbs, but they can be used in both the sense of transitive and intransitive verbs. So, some verbs can be both transitive and intransitive depending on the situation. In some instances or examples, such a verb may require an object, while in others it does not require an object. So it means it depends on the situation that we need to analyze first to see if the words are both transitive and intransitive. For example, the word continue over here can work as both transitive and intransitive verb. We will continue the meeting after the break. Now this is transitive. Why? Because it requires an object, which is this one. The meeting continued after the break. This is intransitive because it does not have any kind of object. Next one is the word play. 3 of the students play the guitar. Now this verb over here is transitive because we have a direct object. The students will play outside today. It is intransitive because it does not have any kind of direct object. This is just what we have as a preposition and the day mentioned, so there is no direct object, hence it is intransitive. Now moving on to our word return. Let's see if it can function both transitive and intransitive. So Javier returned the book to the library. This is transitive because the book is being returned to the library. We have a direct object. Whereas the students returned to school after the winter break, it is intransitive because there is no direct object mentioned. The word grow here can function as both transitive and intransitive. For example, I grow zucchini in my garden. This is transitive because this verb requires a direct object, which is garden. And my plants are growing quickly. Here you can just see an adverb and there is no direct object mentioned, hence it is intransitive. So you saw that these words can function both transitive and intransitive, and it depends on the situation, and still they are in their complete sense. Now you need to remember this formula, you can call it, this format, which is verb, object, prepositional phrase, and then your adverb. So this is the correct order in which you can form your sentence. Now, after learning about all these 3 types of verbs, here is a simulation video that you can watch later on, any given time. It will be played by your teacher or instructor, and you can learn a lot about helping verbs, transitive and intransitive verbs using this video lesson. Next one, we have your classroom activity, where you have to choose the correct auxiliary verb or helping verb from these given choices by filling the bubbles. So time to put your learned lesson into practice by solving this classroom activity. Here is your worksheet related to the main lesson that you can solve, and for your homework you have to use the following words in sentences of your own to show whether these act transitively or intransitively, or whether they can act as both transitive and intransitive. So first you can come up with a sentence which is having a transitive verb or intransitive, or you can use the word in both transitive and intransitive if it is only possible. Now at the end, I would like to introduce all these different resources available for your help and understanding. These resources are available in the description of the video. My dear learners, thank you for listening, and I hope that you have covered our students' learning outcome with me, in which we discussed about different verb types, and we talked about the the helping verb or auxiliary verb, and also we looked at transitive and intransitive verbs. And intransitive verbs include your direct object to which the action is being received, and your intransitive verb does not require any kind of direct object. See you in the next video lesson. Allah Hafiz.